Evil Toaster, Colorblind, and Steve-O, these are the names of the heroes that will deliver us from the GOATS-pocolypse. Yesterday, this Onetrick trio teamed up to take their Symmetra, Bastion, Orisa strategies into ranked, and they actually played up against a very formidable 3-stack on the enemy team. Defran, Emong, and Seagull, current and former pros, these guys are no slouches. Of course, this is Quick Play Plus ranked, not the most serious environment, but the effects of playing this anti-GOAT setup were so severe, I just had to follow up on our coverage of Symmetra and what she's been doing in the metagame recently, and wanted to take a deeper look of how this type of team comp operates. Remember, all 3 of their links will be in the description, so you can go check them out on their Twitch pages when they stream. Now let's get back into breaking down this wacky team comp. The truth is, I know that this comp has been attempted at professional level play, but I think it deserves a bit more cooking and practice, especially on the new patch we have now with the nerfed Brig, because as you can see, it really causes some serious problems for GOATs. Now, it has to be noted that we're not playing up against a full GOATS pre-made stack. This isn't a complete pro team. And in fact, some of the pros and former pros we're playing against, these aren't their main heroes anyway, so not the most optimized GOATS approaches. But still, I think we can take a deeper look at the strengths that this comp has to leverage up against the close range brawl comp. Now, the first thing I want to point out is that most of the time in this game, Evil Toaster is actually calling to get another healer, which I think is a massive mistake. Actually, part of their easy success is due to the fact that they're only running one healer. We say it all the time. The concept of healing is incredibly overrated, and considering the meta GOATS comp right now is not defined by which comp provides the most healing, but in fact, which provides the most damage in the Zenyatta variant, this principle shouldn't really be a surprise. You see, what it comes down to is the idea that GOAT's ability to mid-fight, I think, is drastically overstated. And this is probably a big point of disagreement with me and some of the pro community, but this is how I explain it. If you dodge the engage of a GOAT's composition, it has absolutely no mid-fight. Because the entire comp requires them to play at really close range to do anything, if you dodge that engagement, avoid damage, and deal longer range damage towards them, you do eventually win. It's just normally the case that they have so much healing and shielding capabilities that you can't deal enough damage fast enough, but it's precisely the Bastion and Symmetra, and a bit of the Orisa as well, that finally gives you enough firepower to actually make this work. But I want to take a look back to describe how these different picks work in synergy. First of all, to the very first team fight. Typical GOATs engage, they just run over everybody and are able to clobber our Bastion who's set up in the choke. But because of that, the Symmetra and McCree go completely uncontested, and we actually do get the opportunity to see what Steve-O does here, absorbing the engage and teleporting right out of dodge, getting all the way up to the stage 3 of the Sim Beam. This is an instant win button, and I'm not kidding. If you do not hard focus the Symmetra in this team comp, and she gets into level 3 charge with her primary fire, GOATS loses. But 3-3 has a serious problem on their hands because they also have to go flood down the Bastion. If the Bastion goes uncontested, the same exact thing happens. And I think this is the exact trick. Normally we're trying to beat GOATS compositions with very sustainable damage characters, but not characters that have extreme amounts of damage and are extreme threats. They're usually just okay threats, like a Pharah or something, who over the course of 5 seconds or something maybe can kill a tank. Whereas Symmetra or Bastion can delete a Brig off the face of the planet once they get their superpower damage going. And remember, Bastion did just get 2 key buffs that help him do this, where in his Sentry form, his Cone of Fire reduces the longer he shoots, sort of like how a Symmetra beam ramps up, but more severe even, and sooner. But also in Recon mode, when he's running away, he has more ammo to just spend towards shield break. Now, the big sticking point to this for me, to take it to the next level, is optimizing this comp correctly. Where we've already seen multi-DPS comps get used in contenders in an attempt to force counter the GOATS composition, the Orisa Sim Bastion at the core of the comp gives these otherwise very immobile characters the ability to dodge and engage with the teleporter. And that's the most important key to me. It's all about that teleporter value to get one of your key carries churning in the fight and find a big opening while you essentially have to sacrifice another one. This is why I highly advise not to attempt to go for 2 healers in this setup, because the problem is, if you're fighting the GOATS comp in a way where you need to be healed, you've already lost the fight. That's not an option, which is why when we see the 4 DPS comps out of contenders, they usually run it with a solo heal Mercy, which I think is what this comp desperately needs. You have the damage amp in order to get your Bastion some severe shield break, and probably more more importantly, you have some of the strongest movement in the game to dodge the GOATs engage. That's the entire premise of how to get a comp like this to work at an even higher level. And to go one step further, the McCree ends up working out for them in this matchmaking game, but he as well is the type of character where you have to go send multiple things at for him to look bad. Between the 3 damage sources, sure, you're not going to be able to heal one of them, and somebody's getting ran over, be it Sim, Bastion, or McCree, but if all 3 of them are firing from different angles, all of a sudden, GOATS starts to turn into GOATS cheese. But still, I doubt the McCree is the best option. Maybe it's still pretty good because now he has that tank busting right click. So maybe he is a pretty good answer. He also can take the teleporter. But I'd be interested in seeing what a character like Tracer does even now in this meta, where although she didn't get any buffs, she got a bit of a soft buff in that Brigida no longer can one-shot kill her. Of course, the rally armor is still going to be a big problem, but as long as you time your pulse bombs in conjunction when the Brigida has rally, we may find ourselves in a type of team comp that actually can contend with GOATS. And I say Tracer's important despite GOATS on paper and normally being good against Tracer because you need a character that can stay in the fight for an extremely prolonged period of time. Sure, if McCree does get his angles and you're playing up against a GOATS comp like this that probably isn't playing as refined as you need to try to counter this properly. I think Tracer's actually the hidden element because if you remember, Tracer's the reason why Reinhardt fell out of the meta to begin with. Top level Tracer play can dodge this type of value all day, farm up pulse bombs, and I think perhaps more importantly, always keep that backside angle threat to finish off targets that the Symmetra and Bastion start to whittle down. A better GOATS team, I think, doesn't fall victim to the McCree, Bastion, Sim, but to some degree, top level Tracer play always is in your backline and you can't do anything about it. And even now, I think GOATS does have an opening for Tracer to exploit, seeing as Brig will need a teammate to help focus down the Tracer. And some other interesting points that we have to bring up as well, Orisa is severely underrated against Brigida. She traditionally was very bad against GOATS because her playstyle would dictate that if you expected her as a tank to contest the objective, well, it just ain't happening against the entire Brawl comp. But her barrier, of course, blocks the stun anyway, but Orisa never really cared too much about a stun since she's playing at distance anyway, and Fortify, next to perhaps Hammond's Adaptive Shield, is the best tanking ability to play up against GOATS to try to sustain for a period of time and absorb some cooldowns. A lot of times, Orisa needs to be the bait in this setup and actually put out a bit of a carry performance because the issue is normally whenever an Orisa gets run at the pro level up against the GOATS, Orisa's the thing they clobber, but you can't afford to do that up against the Bastion and Sim. They're way more important, got way more scary damage that ramps up later into the fight. So because of that, the Orisa is allowed to do a lot more, and once you get Supercharger, well, all of the tanking in the world doesn't help you. Another key point that I really love about this comp is that the Symmetra wall really helps entrench your Bastion teammate and is yet another barrier for you to play around to dodge Brigida's stuns. I don't know if you guys have played much Brigida on the new patch. I have quite a bit, and I gotta tell you, trying to operate getting your stuns in around shields makes it so that the opportunities you have to stun in comparison to the last patch feel like something like a fourth of what they used to be. You used to be able to toss out stuns all the time, but now with the way that the game plays, Brigida, although is still very strong, is way less active in a lot of these fights, and instead has to hold stun for the perfect opportunity, and if you're playing around a shield that spans the entire map, well, we're just diminishing that Brig value more and more with that type of play. Now the truth is, to master this kind of comp, it would take a serious amount of dedication to get your rotations on the teleporter up to snuff. You really have to outsmart your opposition in where you bounce to, and it's all about dodging that engage. The single support I think you should consider is probably Mercy, but if you find yourself struggling to dodge the close range brawl, just go with a Lucio to help speed those targets away. Again, you have to remember that this type of comp can't be built to attempt to heal. It has to dodge close range brawls and deal way more damage at range in order to keep the GOATS comp at bay. I'm excited and hopeful for this patch, guys. I think it actually could be a thing. We may even see Symmetra get used at the highest level of play. I have a lot of faith in strategies like this working. As Evil Toaster and crew proceeded to play against the 3-stack of Defran, Seagull, and Emong. I believe they beat them like 3-1, and it wasn't up against GOATS the entire time, but GOATS performed so badly for them in one of the matches, I think they just never wanted to go back to it, and were forced to look into the counters that actually do something against Symmetra and Bastion. There's probably an entire other argument to be had that even if we land on a place where Bastion and Sim have now finally been buffed enough to handle the GOATS composition, we still have the problem of some severe rock, paper, scissors play in the game, which is a very different way of playing Overwatch in comparison to the beautiful days of old that the Seagull video talked about, where every matchup felt winnable if you played it right, and there's way more interplay. Now it feels way more like counterplay, where the right comp beats the wrong comp, and if you don't switch, well, you get wrecked. But at this point, I'm just sort of happy to see GOATS get wrecked at any point in time. Symmetra Bastion is weak to all sorts of things, but they aren't getting played, so forcing them into the meta rotation is fine by me. Guys, that's gonna be everything for this Symmetra comp breakdown. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to leave it a like. It really does help us out and lets us know that you're enjoying the content. And if you haven't already, please subscribe because we upload each and every day, so you're gonna wanna hit the bell icon so that you get notified when our videos go live. Be sure to check out the 3 streamers that were featured in this triple stack of GOATS slaying terror, linked in the description. That's been it for me. I've been Frito for your Overwatch. I'll see you guys next time.